Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello, welcome to Parenting in the 21st Century. I'm Zina Shevchik. Today we have with us community educators from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Albany County, Ellen Cooper and Tarasha Darden-McKoy. They're here to discuss a class they offer on parenting after separation and divorce, helping children adjust. Thank you for being here, Tarasha and Ellen.
Thank you for having us.
Nice to be here.
Good. Tell us about the program and what its purpose is.
The purpose of the program is to help parents who are going through a divorce, separation, or custody issues to really help them to see how they can help their children to reduce the conflict between the two parents and also help the kids to adjust to the new situation that they're going through, possibly living in two separate households.
And who attends this workshop, and how do they become eligible for the workshop?
What happens is they are either referred by the court, or sometimes people just call in. They're going through a divorce or separation, or they're thinking about going through a divorce or separation, and they will self-refer. What happens is they call in, they get a registration form, they fill the form out, send it back to us. There are certain information that we need to have from the parents. The parents do come to the class individually. They don't attend the same class. And if domestic violence is an issue in the parents' relationship, there's a small part of the questionnaire that they need to fill out. There are some instances where there may be an order of protection in place, so the parent may choose to opt out of coming to the class, but we still will give them the information.
Now, when you say referred from the court, you mean if there's already been some paperwork or a presentation in front of a judge or to the clerk of the court indicating that there's a divorce or separation in progress? Is that it? Or
it's that also they may be already be divorced, but maybe going back to family court for an issue with child support or custody, and then the judge will say, you know, you really should go to this program, and will either mandate or refer a person to the program.
So sometimes it's required.
Sometimes it's required, and sometimes it's just a referral that the judge feels that the parents would really benefit from coming through the program.
But I didn't understand before this program that it was available to people without that kind of a referral or mandate, that people could just request participation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is there a cost to this class? Is there, and how long is it? How does it?
The cost of the class is $50. However, we do provide scholarships. There is a $10 non-refundable fee, though, if you are seeking a scholarship, and it's basically to cover the cost of the materials and also to hold the person's place in the class. However, if they can't pay the $10, we do allow people to come in without paying anything. You know, it really depends on their income and the circumstances, and we deal with that on a case-by-case basis. The classes are held in 2 sessions, usually 3 hours each session, and usually held in an evening, and sometimes we'll have it on a Saturday, and usually twice out of the year we'll have it for a whole day of 6 hours.
Okay. So, and it is important, I think, for a lot of people to know what you mentioned before, that parents are expected to attend separately.
Yes.
Like they don't have to be in the room together. So,
and some parents want to come. You know, they have either separated or divorced, and they do have a good relationship going on. It just makes it a lot easier for the parents to feel that they can talk openly without having perhaps something that they disclose within the class being brought back into family court. And also it allows them to really get out what they may have had either a question about that they may not have felt comfortable talking about in front of their child's other parent.
Typically, how large is the class?
The largest that we'll go up to is a size of 20 in the class, but we've done it for one person, we've done it for two, usually a class typically is between 5 to 10 people in a class.
So you'll have the class even if there's only one or two, you're saying?
Yes.
You do
Mm-hmm.
you do that, okay. And do you employ different techniques in the class? I mean, is there lecture and then also discussion? Is there
We employ a lot
play?
of techniques. We do role plays, we do scenarios, we use PowerPoint, we also use videos, and just discussion with the program participants. And then at the end of session 1, we actually have them play a game that's sort of built on Jeopardy, where we go over all of the things that we've discussed in the first 3 hours. And it really is a review of the program, but it's also a way that they can see how well they've been able to obtain some of that information in a fun way and sort of a relaxed way, instead of just saying, what did you learn?
So you are a community educator for Albany County Cooperative Extension. Am I right about that?
Well, actually, Ellen is an educator for Albany County. I'm an educator for Rensselaer County. Every cooperative extension has an educator, has an office in each county of New York State, and then they have educators that deal with a variety of topics. For this particular program, we partnered together, Albany and Rensselaer County, because you need to have 2 facilitators for each of the programs.
Okay, so for this parenting after separation and divorce, there's always 2 people?
There's
Yes.
always 2 facilitators.
Okay,
Yes.
so you cover Rensselaer County and Albany County, the 2 of you,
Right.
for
Yes.
this particular class.
But we're open to anyone who calls. Like, if someone from Schenectady County wants to attend, they can attend as well. And we've had people from out of state attend.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So it's open to anyone who calls. But we're basically holding the classes in Albany, in downtown Albany, or in downtown Rensselaer.
Okay.
Downtown Troy.
Downtown Troy or
Right.
downtown Albany. Okay, that's good to know. What are the components of this class that you offer? What are the subjects that you
Okay.
take?
We start with statistics. We give the statistics of divorce today, and currently divorces are running, marriages are ending in divorce between 50 and 60% of the time. First marriages are ending in divorce. So, and 1 million children a year are being affected by divorce every year.
New children.
New children, yes. So because of the high statistics of divorce, we go into the program, and when people remarry, 65% of those remarriages are ending in divorce.
So it's not much better the second time
It's
around.
worse. Unless people change, unless they have an opportunity to learn some new information and make changes, they have a higher chance of getting divorced the second time than they did the first time. And so because of that high statistic, we're trying to educate people so that when they go into a new relationship and enter into a new marriage, that this marriage will stay, because what's happening is the children are having another loss. When another divorce happens, then the children have another loss to deal with, and loss is hard. It's very painful, and we're hoping that these programs will help the new relationships survive, so you don't have 60% of new relationships, again, ending in separation or divorce.
Great.
So we start with statistics, and then we talk about the importance of normalizing the relationships for children. Parents need to understand that children are living in the world, and they go to school, and they have interactions with other agencies in school and teachers, and they really need to be aware of the situation in the child's life to make it easier for them. So people understand last names and different names, and where the child's going, and if the child has to go somewhere else after school, and perhaps having supplies and books in 2 places instead of 1. So the children aren't responsible for where's your soccer shoes, or why aren't your books here, or they're over at dad's, and just
So the practicalities and logistics
Absolutely.
of divorce and separation, and how that is so different for a child.
and it impacts them greatly. And then it just helps them manage the situation better when just little things like shoes and coats and winter jackets are at both places, and we talk about that a lot.
About putting the parent putting himself or herself literally in the child's shoes to
Absolutely.
understand what it's going to mean
What
on
it's
a
like for
day-to-day
them.
basis,
Yeah.
right? For the
and
child.
to reduce the stress for the whole family.
Right.
Just reduce the stress of that. And children can, we talk about how the impact of divorce on children and how that can be lessened when things are done to help the children and help the situation, when buffers are put in place to balance out and overcome the risk factors. And we talk about the risk factors in a divorce, the loss that children go through, changing homes, changing schools, possibly losing their primary relationships. Now grandma and grandpa, they can't go to that house anymore because there's a separation or divorce now. They've lost cousins, they've lost aunts and uncles, they've lost holiday traditions often. And how to try to minimize those effects on children, and how to put some buffers into place to balance out the risk factors so children aren't suffering as many losses. And when parents put those buffers in place, children will come out fine. But if there's more risk factors in place than buffers, then the children are going to suffer the consequences of a separation or divorce.
Tell us what a buffer might be.
A buffer might be not changing schools, possibly. Keeping the same schools, keeping the same friends, keeping the same social networks, keeping the same church if possible. Reducing the conflict. We stress that throughout the program. Reducing the conflict between the two parents so the children can go to grandma and grandpa's, the other parents, grandma and grandpa's, and they can, go to their cousin's birthday party that they always went to. Just to reduce the conflict so that children aren't having as many losses, keeping friends in place. And another buffer would be the psychological well-being of the parents. If the parents aren't doing well psychologically, the children are going to suffer the effects of that. So taking care of yourself, keeping yourself, your spirits up, and managing your own stress and conflict is going to help children. And then understanding the age of the children, understanding their temperaments, and even the sex of the child makes a difference. Teenage girls suffer the consequences of divorce more than any other.
Do they?
Yes, they do, and a lot of parents don't understand that. It's harder on teenage girls than it is on any other family member.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and we talk about that. And so reducing putting buffers in place, reducing the conflicts is a really important factor of that. And contact with both parents is another way that parents can reduce the conflict and help the child adjust and come out better the other side, because children love their parents. And unless there's domestic violence or abuse in place, children need to have contact with both parents. And they need to be able to do that without guilt, without recriminations, and without the hostility, without being grilled. And we talk about all of that in the classes and how important it is. And we support this with video clips from movies, and we have a scenario, we put up scenarios, and we talk about scenarios, and they work out scenarios, and we try to give them some hands-on experience in doing it a different way, doing, the conflict and what would happen if this situation happened, someone forgot to pick somebody up. And then what do you do, and just ways to handle situations like that. So you have
some words you can give people to use, or tones of voice to
absolutely
stay away from, and that probably would be very helpful for some people to, actually be given a phrase to use, or a scenario, a script to use, so that I can see how that would be useful.
Yeah, and watching exit lines, entrance lines. If you always say the same old thing every time you see the person, nothing's going to change. If there's conflict there, unless you do something differently and say something differently, nothing's going to change. We talk about the quickest way to insanity is doing the same exact thing in the same exact way and expecting a different result. When you do the same things over and over again.
Say that again. I've heard that before, and I like it. The definition of insanity is
doing the same exact thing in the same exact way and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
When you always do what you've always done, you'll always be what you've always been.
Right.
So unless you do something different, and that's physically do something different. Not just wish for it, think of it, or pray for it. You got to physically do something different to starting to make changes, and that's putting different words that are going to come out of your mouth, and different tones, and different eye contact, and actually doing something different. And when you make changes, even when the other person isn't on the same page as you are, by you doing something different, things are going to change because you've now changed the playing field.
So you're being your own change agent.
Absolutely.
So you're empowering. This is a way of empowering people.
Yes, it is.
And we talk a lot about, the language that people use and changing some of the language instead of just saying, my ex, saying my child's other parent. Softening the language that you use around kids and starting to use this terminology instead of saying that my child comes from a broken home, my child has two homes. Thinking of terminology in more of a positive way so that the kids aren't getting all of that negative language and that negative feelings. Because as Ellen mentioned, the child loves both of their parents, no matter what the situation may be.
And words are very powerful.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another big one, too, is my rights. Instead of saying my rights are, my responsibilities are. And that just changes the whole tone, because when you use the word like rights, it puts a defensive mode in the other person, and right away barriers come up. And just softening the language is so important. We talk a lot about that. And we practice doing that, using different words. And the courts are starting to do that as well. The courts are starting to change the language of divorce. Instead of saying, custody and rights, they're starting to change the language to a softer, gentler terms.
Yes, I did. We had someone here, a lawyer, who talked about child custody, and I can't remember right now what term she used, but she did say, I know there is a different phrase, they use a different word to describe the situation. That's a big change for adults to make, because we learn automatic responses, and it's very hard to get out of that. I just know being in a functional family, I know how difficult it is to not slip into an automatic response or an automatic behavior. So in a stressful situation, it seems to me it's got to be much more thoughtful.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the last part of session one, we go into discipline techniques. Did you want to talk about that, Tarasha, a little bit?
And basically what we try to teach the parents or talk with the parents about their disciplining style. What style of parent home that they come from, and what type of family and discipline style do they want their children to have. So if they were authoritarian or authoritative or a backbone style of parent, thinking about how can you make some changes down what we call a continuum from being a jellyfish or a parent who is very laissez-faire, where there aren't a lot of rules and guidelines, down to a parent who is a brick wall, who, do as I say, and that's the way it is. And we try to move them to the center of authoritative parent, where backbone style of parent, where there are some flexibility. Kids do have some say and some ideas in how they are going to be disciplined, so that it really gives the kids an opportunity to see that they need to have that self-discipline. And it takes some time for parents, because they may have been on one end of that spectrum and trying to move to the center, to that backbone, to really thinking about the discipline that they may have been doing with their child, really can be a challenge for some families.
And that is, I think it's interesting that a lot of people don't know what normal is. In my experience with parenting, you don't. I didn't have a lot of exposure to young children as I was growing up, and so my parenting style only came from my parents. And you often, if you're not exposed to other types of parenting, you don't understand what is normal behavior for a child. And I imagine that's what you also get into, is what to be expected,
Right.
what is to be expected.
Exactly. We spend time on that as well.
Because that's I think hard for a lot of people to understand, that part of being a child is behaving in a certain way,
In a
pushing
certain
the
age.
limits.
Yes.
What do they say? Pushing the envelope,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So
That's their job, to push the limits, to find out
Right.
where they are.
and the parent's job is to set those limits.
Yeah.
And
And children are very good at their job.
yeah, right. I would imagine that part of that discipline, then, you're talking about moving from a parent discipline to a child learning self-discipline. That's where I'm heading, is that is a process, that it's not something that a 7-year-old or at 7 or at 10 or at 13 you can expect to be finished. that it's
Oh, no. And that's what we really try to get across to the parents, that, this is some work that you're going to have to do, and that we're giving them tools that they can put in their toolbox that they can use with their kids. And not everything is going to work with every child, but you have some resources there that you can go back to and that you can try, instead of just saying, oh, I'm just going to go back to the way that I was doing it before. It takes time, and that it's not going to happen overnight, because people sometimes think that, oh, well, I came to this class, I learned this skill, I can go in and implement it immediately and I'm going to see immediate change. And really, when a child is going through a divorce or separation, for that child, they're dealing with a whole spectrum of issues. And so in regards to discipline, it may take them a little bit longer to be able to learn the new skills that the parent is trying to instruct them in.
So that is one of the consequences of a loss for a child, is maybe taking a little bit longer to reach maybe behavior goals, or I guess behaviors, that's all I want to say, is that then you might expect from somebody who's in an intact, functional family.
You have to understand, too, that children, when they suffer losses, it's painful for them. It's painful for anyone to suffer losses and to be in emotional pain and turmoil. When one of the parents is no longer in the household, it's painful for children. And children and adults as well can have a hard time handling severe emotional pain. And often pain will surface in anger. It'll surface as anger. It'll surface as lashing out, because lashing out and anger is easier to deal with than emotional pain. Because emotional pain, it feels like almost like your guts are twisting up inside your body, and it's hard. You can't really live there very long. But anger is easier to deal with, and when children are lashing out in anger, often it's because of an emotional, painful experience.
So that's a component of the class.
Yes.
The workshop is anger management for the children and the parent that you're teaching?
We want the parents to understand how children react in anger, and why they might be lashing out in anger, and what some of the underlying causes could be, and how to help minimize those causes. And then in session 2, we go into a lot of anger management and stress management for the parents, because they're really modeling for their children how to handle stress and how to handle anger. And when they're lashing out in anger, or lashing out when they're under stress, they're really showing their children, this is what you do when you are under stress, or when you're angry, you're frustrated. And so we go into, we explain to the parents how your brain reacts when you're under stress. When we're under stress and when we're under anger, we really lose a lot of IQ points, because you can't find the right words to use, because you're really dealing from the emotional center of your brain, which is the mid part, or the brain stem part of your brain, when you're under a lot of stress or anger. And that part of the brain is 30 IQ points less intelligent than your thinking brain. And we spend a good amount of time helping them understand that when you're under stress, when you're under anger, you really need to give yourself time to calm down and take yourself out of the situation before you respond inappropriately. Because, again, if you always do what you've always done, you always do what you've always been. If the first thing that's going to come to mind is what you've always said, and when you lash out and you want to change that behavior, you need to give yourself time to calm down, and so you can get your thinking brain back. Otherwise,
so your judgment,
absolutely,
and decision making, problem solving is much better after your brain calms down.
Absolutely. When you lose 30 IQ points, that's significant. It's a lot of IQ points.
So that's for the parent as well as the child.
Both,
right?
Mm-hmm. So you have an angry, screaming parent yelling at a frightened, screaming, stressed out child, and they're both down 30. Together, you're down 60. Right. So what good is going to come out of this scenario? Nothing.
Right.
And not for the child or the parent. So who's going to make changes? It's not going to be the child. The parent's going to need to be the one needs to be able to get control and realize, and just understanding that, I think we all know that, we don't do our best when we're under stress, but we really don't understand that we lose that much. I know I didn't understand that.
No, I've never heard that. I've never heard that specifically about the part of the brain that is functioning when you're upset or anger versus the parts of your brain that engage when you're calmer.
Right, when
But
you're
I do
calmer.
know that when I'm at this stage of my life, when I'm upset, I can't remember things as well.
That's true.
So there must be something
Yeah.
obviously chemically
Yeah.
going on.
Well, I've been teaching parenting for over 10 years, and when I have my grandchildren at the house, and I'm very, very tired, and it's late at night, and I want these kids to go to bed, do you think I can think of one good parenting tip to tell myself to get these kids to bed? You're gone. Your brain is gone, really, and it's very difficult. So the best you can do is, just try and calm down and
Step back. And
Step back
They
and-
talk about always. I've heard about
Do no harm,
counting to
do no
10.
harm, yeah.
Right. Do no harm. Counting to 10. Right.
and then tomorrow will be a better day.
Right. So think about it. Sleep on it. Whatever,
Exactly,
Right.
exactly,
Right. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Are there different techniques for different age children? Do you go into that at all when you're teaching? I assume that you must discuss on a one to what age children you're dealing with when you're in a class. Is it
Yeah, we
different?
cover the spectrum. We go from infants all the way up to adult children, because some parents may have adult children. They may be going through divorce and separation and even have younger children at home, but have adult children that are dealing with the divorce and separation. And people sometimes don't think about that. They may focus in on the younger kids, but not think about their adolescents or even their young adults that are going through the same situation.
Exactly. I know I've heard recently about some adult children whose parents separated, divorced late in life, and what a shock it is to them and their sense of security and belief system, I suppose,
Yeah.
that there are marriages that can survive anything or are permanent. Yeah, so you're right. That's very interesting. Would you talk a little bit about yourselves and your backgrounds before we go any further? How you got where you are and your experience in your education and
Okay.
how you got to Cooperative Extension? Helen?
Okay, I started with Cooperative Extension in 4-H with my children. That's how I learned about Cooperative Extension. They were all in 4-H. And then when my children got a little bit older, I started volunteering in Schenectady County as a volunteer editor for the newsletter. And then I became aware of a position that opened up in Albany County Extension as a secretarial position. So I applied and I got that position. And I was a secretary for the Expanded Food Nutrition Education Program for quite a few years. And I decided to go to college and get a degree. And I did that. It took me 7 years to get a college degree. And then I always was interested in parenting. So after I got my degree, I applied for the parenting position that became open, and I started teaching parenting, and that was about 12 years ago.
12 years ago.
And then God blessed me with grandchildren right around the same time. So I got all this wonderful experience, and my experience is I have a 10-year-old grandchild down to a 3-week-old grandchild. So I'm continuing to get experience with parenting skills, and it's really given me an opportunity to understand how difficult it is to do what you've learned to do differently. When you're stressed out and tired, it's so hard.
You might know.
You
might know
know,
what
you
you
know.
should be doing, but to actually translate it into
translate it and do it, and it's very, very difficult. And it gives me a lot of empathy for parents, because I know how hard it is for me. I have all this knowledge now, and you still sometimes get frustrated and lose it and say inappropriate things. And I've gone back to my grandchildren more than once and said, Grandma shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry, and it's important for when you blow it and make a mistake. It's important to acknowledge that, and what you're teaching children, that when you make mistakes, everyone makes mistakes, and to go back and show them that you can say you're sorry, so they can say, I've done something wrong that I shouldn't have done, and I'm sorry.
I have to say that in my own experience as well. That makes a huge difference in trust as well, when you acknowledge that you're human to your own children. Yes. Tarasha?
And it's kind of funny that both Ellen and I both started out sort of volunteering for Cooperative Extension, and I actually started my position with Cooperative Extension through a volunteer opportunity that I just saw on the news and said I was interested and I wanted to help out, and found out about a position in the Rensselaer County Cooperative Extension Office. My background was in case management, social work field, and I have a bachelor's degree, and was going to pursue actually at the time to get my MSW because I wanted to be a social worker, and started out in the education field undergraduate, and has since changed my whole way of thinking and what I want to do with my goals in regards to my education. I'm going for a master's degree, and will be having a master's in family and consumer sciences. So a total change, and sort of along the same lines with Ellen. I had at first not my own biological children, but I had a stepson and a sister who I raised, and now have my own biological children, two, 1 11 and 1 9. And so the same thing, you sort of tried those things with the older two, and are now learning some of those life lessons and putting some of the things that we've learned through our education with extension into play now with her with her younger grandkids, and me with my own two children.
Fantastic. So we're coming to the end of our program, but before I end, I want to make sure that we covered everything that you want to be covered today. We don't have the 3 hours, but is there anything that we left out or that you would like to emphasize before we close our program?
I just want to say, we do, in our program, we do get into litigation and mediation, and we have a legal component where we show videotape of a judge and a lawyer talking, and they give a lot of good information and how important it is, the way parents should present themselves in front of the judge, and interactions that are very bad no-nos. When the judges see this, the red flags go up, and a lot of parents aren't aware of these really vital components that that they can bring into a courtroom situation that can be very sometimes beneficial if it's done right, or very, very detrimental if the wrong thing is done. So we make them aware of that, and working towards co-parenting if there's no abuse or domestic violence, where they have a friendly working relationship, like a business relationship with the other parent, is what the goal toward is. And then we talk a little bit about games that parents play and games that children play that can be detrimental to the parenting relationship or to the relationship between the two parents themselves. So that's pretty much the components of the program. Can you think of anything else, Tarasha?
I just wanted to mention that we also do a lot of other programs in regards to parenting. So if people are interested, they should just contact their local cooperative extension. We do programs on nutrition and education, also on budgeting and money management, and a slew of other parenting topics that we provide to the community. So if folks are interested, they really should just contact their local cooperative extension office.
And there's one in every county in New York State?
There's one in every
we
county.
will have on the screen all the contact information for you, and including your website.
Oh, good.
And so people will be able to contact you and find out more. Thank you very much, Tarasha.
Oh, thank you.
And Ellen.
Thank you for having us.
It's been very informative. Thank you for being with us today in Parenting in the 21st Century.